Hey guys, welcome to Flowcast, a podcast by Flowout where we chat with successful entrepreneurs, freelancers, and other amazing professionals that are crushing it in their game. I'm Gal and I'll be your host on this audio journey. In this week's episode, I'm here with Matthew Quinn, who's a mentor, product consultant, and a founder, helping people build and turn their SaaS around, and is also on a mission to fix America's broken food system. So without further ado, sit back, relax, and enjoy the conversation. Hey, Matt, thanks so much for joining. It's nice having you here.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, really excited to chat today.
Yeah, so how are you? How are things?
Things are good. Things are good. I live out in Denver, Colorado. It's extremely dry and sunny place, and we've had thunderstorms for 2 weeks straight. So it's kind of a wild time. Places that don't flood are flooding. People's roofs are leaking. It's a bit of an adventure just dealing with the a local weather at the moment.
Oh, that's so, yeah, sorry to hear that, but
That's right. Luckily, my house is
yeah,
fine.
yeah, I hope it stays that way. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I just suggest we begin, and I will just ask you generally, who are you and how would your family and friends describe you?
Sure. I think funny question. Who am I? I think my family and friends would probably describe me as like an agent of chaos. At any given time, I'm doing too many things. What I want to do in the future changes every couple of years, somewhat. And I think my kind of career history doesn't make a lot of sense to everybody else, but makes perfect sense to me. So that somewhere in there, I'm kind of like a radically driven person. I'm always learning, and then I guess I'm kind of like adjusting based on what I've learned. But yeah, at the moment, I mainly am a product consultant or a leader consulting team that helps big companies with their technology, build new businesses and new products, and then I'm doing way too many things on the side.
Yeah, that's a perfect answer. So let's just talk a little bit about your background. So did you like study anything related to business or something like that? And how did you come to the point where you are now, like running so
Yeah.
many ventures, being a product consultant, just shortly?
Funny. The short answer is no, I didn't study business. I grew up in a household with two business-oriented parents, and I think I always was surrounded by kind of business and the idea of entrepreneurship, but I actually rebelled against that. So I studied civil engineering at university, and before then, I even wanted to go into the army. I was accepted as an officer, but decided to go to university, and then. After that, I became a chartered accountant, and then a management consultant. And then, like, only after kind of 4 years of gruel did I start my first company. So I started my first company. We ultimately sold it. And then went and started a second company with a friend, and that was a very long, painful journey that ended in tears and fire. And then I was a hired gun for a number of startups as a head of product or a head of growth for a couple of years, and then landed at what used to be Pivotal Labs. Now we call ourselves Tanzu Labs. So landed at Tanzu Labs, doing product consulting, and then obviously like a billion side projects somewhere in there as well came along on the side.
Okay, yeah, pretty cool. And I just want to ask you, how do you self-educate? Like apart from formal education that you got, what are like your right now your news sources? Like, do you learn from podcasts, books, news, talking to others, stuff like that?
Yeah, funny. I was a bad student, so formal education was never a thing for me. I mean, I'm aggressively trying to teach myself to code now, and I have been for years, but I'm really kind of dedicated at the moment, and I struggle with it. I would say like my most constant learning source is books. If there's something that like I don't know or an area I want to know better, I'll go and read. I'm like an avid reader. And I think I could take that on a completely different side discussion around like how do you actually learn, and a product I've been thinking about. But books are big. Podcast, Lenny's podcast. I don't know if you're familiar with it. It's mainly a product management focused podcast. It's a former Airbnb PM, but he just interviews like the most incredible people. And I find like I always so informationally dense. I always learn things. And then actually, I think in changing my career path a couple times, and then like even starting in engineering, my network of friends is quite interesting. They're not necessarily like change makers and senior, but my friends are all over the place. And I think I find myself regularly just like learning about other industries, other problems, other trends, just from talking to different people, right? One of my friends built a drone company to help in civil engineering. Another friend of mine is a sales guy, but now he's working at Hugging Face doing sales. Another friend of mine designs like sewage systems, and like I'm always just learning like the bigger like secret trends and other things that are going on from them. Just a real range of people and friends from there.
Okay, yeah, that's nice. Pretty nice network, I guess, to have. I just want to touch down a little bit on your job, right, as a product consultant. So basically, what I wonder is, how is it working with different teams, and what exactly do you do?
Sure.
In, like you say, you help them build great software, right? So how is that? How do you approach the companies?
Sure. So it's really interesting. I mean, Tanzu Labs is a fairly sizable organization, what used to be Pivotal Labs. Fundamentally, the way it works is there are, if you think about it, there are loads of very large businesses that we're surrounded by that need to use technology and have technology products, but you wouldn't call them technology companies. If you think about the largest supermarkets or banks or I don't know, most things that you interact with, right? They don't think that they're product-led growth tech companies. So they have technology that they need to run their business. And when they come and they either want to fix the technology or they want to build new technology or a new business line, they don't necessarily have the skills in-house. I think it would be fairly okay to say that like the technology teams that they have aren't even necessarily the best. You're not talking about like the best engineers, the best PMs, the best leaders. A lot of the time it's people that just end up working in a big company and they kind of have some skill set. So we go in, we have we'll have a whole team. It kind of changes by organization, but typically there's I'll act as like, my title will be PM, but PM, designer, a couple engineers will go in, we'll really explore with them the problem that they're looking at, teach them to validate everything. It's all done in pair. So for every one of us, there's one of them. And then we will ideally build and deliver software or a new business line in partnership with them, such that two things happen. One, when we leave, they know exactly how it works, how we built it, why we built it that way, as opposed to just kind of getting third party to build your software. And then secondly, we're like radically agile. So they learn a lot through that process around some of it's even basic stuff, stand-ups, retros, doing proper potentially like sprint planning, but a lot of it is, at least for me, a lot of it is like there's how to deal with people and stakeholder management, that kind of stuff. And then that's been really interesting. I think part of me misses directly trying to solve a massive problem for a few years, as opposed to like every 3 to 6 months going to work for another like massive company and help them work on something small. But it is at the same time, right, the people that we work with are like a very small piece in a very large machine, and it's so fulfilling to go in and see. Sometimes I work with a PM, sometimes I'll go 4 levels above them and work with the VP of product. To go work with a VP of product of a massive organization who actually isn't very good and doesn't know what they're doing, and to like have such a measurable impact on their life and their career, and at the end they're joyous and they really appreciate the work that you've done with them and how you've helped them change thinking and that kind of stuff. And I stay in touch with, I think it's a bit unorthodox, but I stay in touch with all my past clients, and the VP of product at kind of a massive US company sent me a gift when my son was born, which was such a nice touch. So I'm going off on a tangent here, but that's mainly the way that we work. And then I think that there's probably 10% of our business that comes from big organizations that need technology, but they actually have zero technology. They have no team. I think they might have a CTO for fun, but they have no engineers, and they'll say, we need something, we need this thing, and then we will end up like being their entire like product organization. I don't think I can say who it is, but major American pharmaceutical company that we did that work for over the COVID era, and was like the work that our team did unlocked like $10 billion of revenue. It's like a massive thing for them, and they're just not a technology company, they're an IP company that knows drugs and stuff. So yeah, it's been an interesting journey for sure.
Wow, yeah, it all sounds really amazing. And I love that you mentioned that you like stay in touch with everybody. It's a really, I guess, another level of, that building relationships. But yeah, what I wonder also, so you were saying now that, all the things that ended up great and stuff like that. But what would be like some of the main challenges that you face in companies like this, if there are any? I guess there
No,
are, but
absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I'm painting such a rosy picture of it, but I think every client I've dealt with has been insanely stressful. If you think about the reasons why an organization cannot build their own products internally, or needs help, right? Usually, you can hire good engineers, and there's budget for it. I mean, we're not a cheap organization. We're extremely expensive. But when you hire external consultants, they get to cut through and get around the bureaucracy, the cultural issues, a lot of the scar tissue that is there. So I joke that like when I go in, that like my first job is being a therapist and my second job is being a product consultant. So much of the work we do, or the work I do at least, is getting the person I'm working with to better manage their relationships with their boss, with the people that work for them, with the stakeholders across the organization. I can think about specific examples, like a lot of the time I've been in meetings before where it's like we've spent 8 weeks doing all this research, validating all of this stuff. Cool, we're going to build this thing. We don't commit to deadlines. In Agile, it will be done when it's done. And what you're building is going to change as you build it. And I've kind of pitched this. I've done this presentation to the board, and the CTO, who was a new person brought in because the previous CTO was fired pretty ruthlessly, basically tore me apart in front of my team, in front of their board, and like overruled me, said I'm wrong. That timeline's rubbish. Like we need a better timeline, and it's like completely exhausting. Now that person, what they seem to not understand is like they were physically unable of shipping new products for about 14 years, and like that's not a technology issue. That's a cultural issue. That's a team issue. They didn't really understand a product vision or a strategy or any of these things. So like, I appreciate I'm the consultant, and I think maybe he shipped me publicly to try and carry some weight internally as like more of a powerful change maker. But the dealing with the people is both like the best part of the role and also like the hardest part of what we do. You'll go in and you'll need help from some department 3 levels away, and the department doesn't want to, they're threatened by you, they don't want to give you any information, they don't want to help you out. Culturally, my last client, we would need decisions made, and the person I would mainly work with would go, cool. Yeah, well, we probably need Sarah's input on this. Okay, I'll look at her calendar. Sarah's not available until 2 weeks from now, so I'll set up a meeting with Sarah. And actually, Clive should be involved and Sam should be involved. And next thing you know, it's like an 11-person meeting 3 weeks from now. Like, no. Hold on, time out. Let's just slack this person. And that was like, it seems so obvious now. To them, that was like saying, let's go kill somebody. It was like such an extreme cultural break that you would interrupt someone's day for a quick question and you wouldn't involve a whole committee, which is, it's fascinating to hear me say this, because from a startup perspective, it's absolutely insane, that level of like bureaucracy and cultural rot. But I think as you scale, you need more managers, and this stuff just develops naturally. So a lot of the downsides and the challenges are like cultural people challenges, almost always. But I mean, I guess I would just clarify, like I say this, and the language I use is not with judgment. I fully empathize with how you end up in a situation like this. And also those companies, oddly enough, they probably they probably employ like a quarter of the employees in America. So I don't mean to be blasé about like I think I used the word rot somewhere in there. I'm not meaning to be blasé about like the quality of these organizations. So the work we do, I think, is really valuable because the impact that we can have across so many employees is quite outsized. But yeah, mainly cultural and people issues, absolutely. And they're so intangible that, like, you know, it's not like you won't ship on time. It's like just really stupid stuff. It can be really exhausting. It can be really exhausting. Absolutely.
Yeah, it sure sounds like it. But yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. I appreciate it. And now just this product consulting is just like one part of your day, probably having so many ideas, ventures, and so on that we are gonna talk about a little bit later. But one question I would like to like ask you is, how would your typical day look like? Do you like
Sure.
shift from one idea to another? Do you work on, like, I don't know?
Yeah, funny, I am trying to find time to just be quiet and be at peace, which I struggle with. And I think that without that, I don't appreciate the things that I have in life, such that I'm always driving for more. But I think my normal day, so like today would be a little atypical. My normal day is like I get up at 6. I will like sneak out in the dead silent of the morning, grab coffee. For the first hour, I will like code or work on some projects, or I have a team at Rebel, so I'll catch up with the team because they're on a different time zone, and see what's going on. My son, I like almost refuse to get him up before 7, so I have a 1-year-old. I'll get him up around 7, feed him breakfast, and then take him to daycare, which is just around the corner. But I spent the day at my desk, so I'm now trying to walk an extremely long way to daycare to like get more walking in. On any given day, that's until about 8-ish. On any given day, I will then like exercise for an hour, so 8 to 9. I'm a big cyclist, and like summer's here, so cycling season's on. Lots of training, and then my day will start. So 9 is usually like a stand up with some team internally, either a client I'm on or some other internal project. I currently don't have a client. We can talk about this later. I currently don't have a client. I'm working on some really interesting generative AI stuff that I can talk about later. So then the day will be pretty solid, 9 to 5. Unfortunately, I think working in a consulting firm and being in a lot like working with large organizations, my day is meetings, just like so many meetings. It's something I really still struggle with. The organization that I ran product at beforehand, before I joined Labs, we had 3 hours of meetings a week. So it's like 3 hours to 40 hours of meetings a week, which is such an extreme jump. But with consulting, you just have to be on the phone almost all the time. I would say somewhere in there, I'm like, well, it's not that I'm being distracted, but I will context switch, right? Like an engineer flags that this thing needs doing or something else, or if I get like if a support ticket comes in for one of our applications and it's tiny, I will like double task and get it done, in a break or whatever. And then 5 to 6, I'll probably finish up on another project, something I will like have a dedicated thing I want to look at. I'll have it in my calendar, and then I'll get my son at 6. So 6 to 7 will be like dinner with him, dinner with my wife, hanging out. And then I'd say most of the time, 7 till 9, we are watching television and I'm on my laptop, emailing or doing something, reading. It's all passive, reading something. More recently, it's been like trying to get chat GPT or GPT-4 through the API, like to do something I wanted to do. And then I'm pretty aggressive. I have to be in bed by 9, and I'll read actually, which is dangerous. Like reading as you fall asleep, you don't really retain what you're reading, and you read the same page 20 times. And so, like, do you really learn what you're trying to learn? But yeah, I'll end the bed and end the day that way. It's funny saying. I mean, I've written out in hours. It sounds so intense, but my days don't feel that intense. I sometimes I can procrastinate pretty badly, and it's something I'm really struggling with at the moment. And so I'm finding in the morning, actually, I will try and schedule my day into 1-hour blocks. Like my Google Calendar is full, even if I don't have to meet with somebody. It's like, cool, this hour I'm going to I mean, at the moment we're talking about how do you test AI models. So it's like I'm going to spend the day, like I'm going to spend this hour researching testing of a data model, and then as the hour turns, even if I'm in the middle of the work, I'm like, cool, I got to do the next thing. Like I need to keep moving. So yeah, that's what my day normally looks like. I guess that sounds like there's not that much fun in there, but I mean, it's fun to me. I love helping people. I love business. I love building stuff of value, providing value. I mean, if I think about my day yesterday, it did look like that. Somewhere in there, I am like obsessing over a business idea I have that I'm unconfident about and scared to do. And so I think somewhere what's weaved in there is like the whole day I've spent the day like thinking about this thing as well, with no productive action. I mean, I'm thinking about the same things. And I know I'm going to regret it. Whenever I do it or don't do it, I'm still going to end up regretting having wasted so much time. But yeah.
Okay, yeah, but yeah, like you said, it may not sound so much fun, but it's pretty interesting, at least to me. And I really love that you like dedicate certain blocks of time to working on different projects, because I guess if you're working like, let's say 9 to 5, usually after 5, you would just like take some time off or something like that. So I find this really a great way to work on those side projects.
Also, like I'm quite fortunate. I'm full-time remote. If I want to be, I'm
Mhm.
full-time remote. And so, if I was traveling to an office, it would be even if I was in London and getting on the tube, it would be very different because you're just exhausted by doing that stuff. So, yeah, I'm very fortunate that like I have the time and I'm just trying to use it as best I can right now.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you already mentioned in there Rebel, which is your fund, right, that buys distressed SaaS businesses.
Yeah.
So can you just like tell me something more about that? What is Rebel and what do you do?
Sure. I think so my first company wasn't venture backed, but we tried to make it venture backed. Second company was super venture backed, and still didn't work. And then in my mind, I was just like after. So I'm sure we'll go into this later, but like after my second company failed, I'm in my bones wanting to be an entrepreneur and I want to be in charge of my own path. But it's so much easier said than done. I mean, I have built 0 to 1 projects over and over and over again and launched them and tried to grow them, and they've all failed for one reason or another. And a friend of mine, I was telling him about it, and I was like, I really don't know if I'm any good at this. I basically don't actually feel very good. And he recommended this book to me called Buy Then Build. A guy called Walker Dybell wrote it. MBA, basically saying, hey, we all dream of building these 0 to 100 businesses, but that's just like nonsense. You can still be an entrepreneur if you buy a small business and like grow it into something different. Now, the scale of the businesses he talks about are much larger. But what started was just like, I think it was, I read that book right as Micro Acquire came out. And I had some time, I had a little bit of cash, and I was just kind of playing with this idea of like, I want, like, everybody talking about buying property. If you buy a rental property, you get, the returns are so bad for owning a piece of property versus buying a business based on its cash flow. The returns can be pretty incredible. So I kind of came up with this idea of like, could I invest money in businesses that are very low maintenance? They need some polishing and a little bit of recovery to get them to work again, little applications, and like basically have either passive income or like an incredible portfolio of stuff that grows on the side. And that was my thesis. I guess I started that in 2021, and so I went and bought something. I mean, it was crazy. Given it really was funny for me. I bought something for like $1,000. I sent the guy the money over PayPal. The whole thing, I was so anxious, even though I've dealt with like a larger company, employees, millions of dollars. I just felt like everything could go wrong here. It was in PHP. I literally cannot code. I actually am not a functioning person that can code. So like I had to go and hire an engineer through Upwork that could work on it so cheaply that it would make sense. And like it was all very fishy. I'm paying these guys through Western Union. It felt so uncertain. Anyway, I ended up buying something super cheap that with a little bit of polish ends up paying, I think that their first one probably pays like $500 a month. Actually, it's changed. We finally just shipped a massive update, so it's paying about $1,000 a month, and I probably deal with 4 support tickets a month. So it's like very tiny. I always tell people when people want to know about it, like I play in the mud. I'm like down in the dirt, negotiating stupid details to get, for me, a massive return. I mean, I paid $1,000 and now it pays me $1,000 a month and I do no work. That's pretty crazy. The second one, I was like, cool. The first one was working. I was like, great, I need another one. It's like 5 months later, bought another product, completely different coding language. I needed to hire a different engineer. And then I think it slowed down. So my son was born. I've had to fire a number of these engineers. It's very hard dealing with engineers in like Pakistan and India. Either like there's a different cultural communication. Yes, this will be done next week, and then it's like literally not done for months. And somewhere in there, like life gets busy, right? Like I had a newborn, and so I literally like basically didn't look at it. I just put it on autopilot, said, hey, you guys deal with tickets, and it slowed down. And then this year came around, and I was like, cool, I need to buy something a lot bigger. Like I want to be serious now. And interestingly enough, I negotiated with a guy for a month, and basically had a moment this week where I was supposed to make a yes or no decision. All cash deal, much larger than the other companies, and I just got a bad feeling. I can't explain it. I just have a bad feeling about it, and so I just said no. And it's like pretty painful. A lot of work has gone into trying to get to this one. But yeah, I just said no, and I kind of thought, I'm better at playing in the mud. I'm going to go and find something really scrappy. So, I mean, the way that Rebel basically works, the model that really works is engineers and indie hackers think they want to build new companies, but they don't know what they're doing. So they spend ages building a product, and then it's not positioned right. The marketing makes no sense. Most of the time you look at these things and you're like, I have no idea what this product does. Then they don't even have, like a welcome email or a cancellation email, really basic shit. And at that point, they're just so exhausted. They go, you know what? I'm just going to sell this thing. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm going to sell this thing. And so I think what happens is they try and sell things based on the time that they put into it. But the reality is that's meaningless to me. And no one wants to buy it. And so I'll go and just be like, okay, well, how much money are you earning a month? Like, let's just put a normal multiple on that. And then the products that they have are usually so young, you can't really say, let's say something's making $100 a month. You can't really say, okay, that's $1,200 a year. Okay, your ARR is $1,200 a year, because there's no actual history. So they then will, if they're pretty honest about it, they'll take a discount on the multiple, and so you just end up with like both like nothing and also an amazing deal. And truthfully, like they don't really want to deal with it. I think they usually in the beginning, because none of it makes any sense. The customer support tickets are there's so many of them. And we managed to get lucky. I mean, actually, funnily enough, I just this morning, having canceled that other deal, I went and found something tiny again this morning. And it's a mess. It is actually a mess. And I just went to the guy and was like, honestly, I don't want to negotiate with you. Here's my logic. Here's how much I value it at. If you sell it to me today, I will just guarantee you can have 10% of the revenue as like a royalty for the rest of your life, for as long as I own it. Like, let's literally not mess with it. Just give me this thing. Like, you don't want it, I can give you the cash. Just give me it. And then you have to deal with lawyers. You have to do any of it. And I sent that half an hour ago. So who knows? Who knows if I'll get it? I think I probably will. But for me, the funny thing was I looked at the listing and I went, I personally know what this does because I know the space, but I have no idea what you're trying to tell me this application does. So pretty obvious, like immediate couple of wins that I could do now, or I can get another guy to do it, right? And then I could forget about the application effectively for 4 months if my life gets busy, and then come back and it will still be alive. It's a subscription, so it will still be paying me. And that's the play. So I think somewhere in there, like Rebel, I did have dreams of grandeur with Rebel, that it would be this massive thing. I mean, I named it Rebel because it was like, a friend of mine always says, be a rebel and start a family. And it was like, cool. If I can replace my job I can like be a rebel. I just have a big family and like won't stress about too much stuff. And I think now it's a really interesting stepping stone in terms of getting. I think if you go through a significant or even catastrophic failure in business, it's like a really good process of getting used to risk again, managing a team, being in charge of your own thing. I mean, so much I deal with clients. There's so much bureaucracy and pushback and no and long timelines that like I can log off and then like be in charge of my own products immediately that like make money and have customers. So it's kind of some amalgamation of that. And I think I've recommended it to so many people, right? Like if I was going to start another company today, that not only am I going to burn down my savings, okay, I'll probably try and raise some money, but like I immediately am earning a couple $1,000s a month through doing no work. Like that massively de-risks starting another business or building another product, and gives you such like objective clarity, right? You're not desperate that the thing needs to work. You can actually listen to users saying this isn't working and like be open to radical change, which I think can be very, very hard when you're an extremely poor entrepreneur and you've like invested so much time into something. So that's the rebel story. It's interesting because I guess to me, again, like it doesn't feel like a massive success. It doesn't feel that sexy, but when I'm talking about it, I mean, 2 years ago, I couldn't possibly have imagined that I basically do no work and get paid a bunch of money. That's a sizable amount of money for some people. And when I actually find at work, if I ever mentioned Rebel, like it's mind blowing to so many colleagues that they would ever own their own business or have something that can behave that way. Yeah, and I guess even people on Twitter find it kind of crazy. So anyway, that's Rebel.
Yeah, oh, wow, pretty interesting. Yeah, actually super interesting. But yeah, I guess the whole public image of owning a business is like something huge, something a lot of work needs to be done, managing a huge team or like growing it to to skyrocket. So I really like the approach you're taking with this really mud, you say, businesses that are in the mud. But I also like have a question. Do you have any specific like framework criteria that you base your decision on? Which one you will offer to buy?
Yeah, so I would say, I mean, I've definitely learned as I've gone on, right? When I first started, I was like, I can buy and grow anything. I used to run growth. I'm a genius. And I mean, the Rebel applications themselves are like evidence that that's not true. I have basically, I think the most critical thing that I've really hammered home, and I already knew this, but now that my money and my time's on the line in a more invested way, when I look at something, fundamentally, there has to be a very clear path to getting customers. So I've fallen into, just happened to be, and Rebel is basically all Shopify apps now. Shopify, the platform, man, I've gone through some pretty painful times with Shopify, and they do some extremely unfriendly things to their partners like me. But when it works, like on any given month, I can do no ads, I can publish no new articles, I can do no outward promotion, and I know that 200 stores are going to install my application and at least try it out. And so that is like the value of that is so incredible if you think about the number of side projects that you can ship, and you start with zero and there is zero inbound ever. Having a platform or having some very clear path to customers obvious path to customers from the beginning is so important to me. And then I think the other thing I'll do is if I can, I will try and get people I know that would be users, in my mind would be target users, and say, hey, thinking about buying this company, here's the value that I believe it will provide to you. Ignore all the marketing, all that stuff. Can you just check it out? And like, give me, like, it's going to be $15 a month if you're a customer. Like, would you pay for it? Yada, yada, yada. I mean, most of that, would you? Is a question I would stay away from. But so example, actually, the one I was just looking at this week, that ended up was going to be an all cash deal, the big one. I sent up to 3 people who all run big Shopify stores. I mean, big Shopify stores, and they didn't respond. I sent it to them a couple weeks ago. They didn't respond. So I just like ignored that part of due diligence. And then they all came back this week and they were like, no. And it wasn't even like, it's not polished. It's a mess. So it wasn't like no because of these things. It was just like, no, this is not usable to me. There are alternatives. They're competitive. I don't use those either because that doesn't make sense for my business, which was a big thing for me of like, oh shit, okay, well, I was imagining it once I buy this, I immediately can get these 3 customers that are going to pay me this much money. So yeah, path to customers is usually the most critical thing. I think in a normal deal as well. So being a chartered accountant and then being a former accountant, like and I guess also being a PM, like numbers. I like sleep in numbers. I dream in numbers. So from the beginning, I have the ultimate BS detector if somebody's not being honest about their numbers. And I ask questions that I think most acquirers don't ask, very specific questions around churn and average order value and how this stuff works. And if a business owner that's trying to sell it doesn't just say, hey, I don't know, or I've never looked at that or whatever, then it's a massive red flag for me. I'm like, cool. It's one thing to not know your numbers and like be honest about it. But if you take a long time to answer or the numbers never really add up, like, no, I'm not doing that.
Yeah, makes sense, complete sense. And thank you for sharing your like framework. Are there like any other red flags you already mentioned, if there's like BS around it, but any other specific red flags that you are just going past it, like, no, not going to that, even though you find it like interesting, for example?
Yeah, I mean, one of the funny things is, I don't know if you're familiar with micro acquire. I think they call themselves acquire now. When you try and sell your organization, sell your company, even if actually away from acquire, right? You try and sell your actual company anywhere. One of the things that is kind of normal in the packet when you're selling it is saying like why you're selling it and what you might do to grow it going forwards. The reasons why people say they are selling it are usually wrong. That's usually a lie. Oh, I'm too busy, I want to focus on this other thing. It's usually like, no, I mean, you built it, you thought it was going to work and it didn't work. And then the ideas for like, well, this is how I would grow it is pretty hilarious. So people say, oh, SEO and ads, and you're like, well, it's not, those are just words that don't mean anything, right? Like you're trying to, when you say SEO, like I'm assuming you've looked at SEO and you realize that this is not a good candidate to do any SEO with. So like, why are you misleading me there? So I usually will ask for like one obvious thing, how would you grow this if I gave you money? And if the answer is, SEO and ads, then I'm usually like, yeah, okay, this thing, I don't know if this thing can ever be recovered. But if it's, oh, I looked at SEO, but it doesn't really work. But actually, I have thought that we could do TikToks of reviewing Shopify stores, and this is how it would work because there's no one doing that. And I know that there's an audience there. Then you're like, okay, bingo, this guy actually is thinking about it. The reasons here are probably quite legit. And yeah, I think there's something interesting here of like, I would love to buy a much bigger business. I would need leverage. That's fine. There is, I think in the next 10 years, like $10 trillion of business needs to change ownership in America, right? As boomers are retiring. The funny thing about playing in tech products and tech companies is that like no one is retiring. That's like not why they're selling it. So the reasons to sell are always a bit funny. My wife was just looking at buying an art gallery, and again, it's like somebody retiring. Made complete sense. Ultimately, it was a no-go for us. But yeah, though I think the reasons for not doing it are hilarious. Actually, most people's reasons that make no sense.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for explaining. And yeah, so this is Rebel, which is very, very interesting, but I'm also like interested in your other ideas, which I find, especially the regenerative farming ideas, I find super, super interesting. So I'm not from the US myself, but you say that the whole, food system is broken and you're on a mission basically to fix that. You want to do it by building or buying a regenerative farm, right? So can you just shortly like explain the concept and what is your vision for
Sure.
on that field? Yeah.
The key word here is shortly. It's definitely a massive space. So let me try and keep this punchy. I would say if you start, for whatever reason, this has happened to a couple of people I now know who obviously are in the space. If you start looking at like what are supposedly like base fact truths, first principle truths on health, on food, on why people are getting sick, you'll start to realize that what we think we know is mostly like rubbish. And the like supporting evidence, I mean, it's a paradox. The supporting evidence for that is, 70% of Americans are overweight. I think 88% of Americans are metabolically unhealthy. If you look at the trend lines, like in the UK, that's also increasing. France, that's increasing. Most of the European nations, that's increasing. And there's not really a lot of understanding as to why that is. I mean, fundamentally, chronic health is driven by food, what we eat, when we eat, how we eat. When America is the extreme, and I mean, now I live here, it is really extreme. You go to a supermarket and you kind of, any aisle you walk down, nothing is actually food. It's all like a food-like product. Everything is processed food. You can extrapolate this out, like everybody is sick. I mean, I would say every American I know in some way or another has some illness. Even now, I think it's proven like chronic mental illness is driven by food. So that can be schizophrenia, depression, ADHD. They're all tied to insulin resistance. So how do we solve that? Like fundamentally, you need to solve that with eating better food and different food. Now, all these things are combined. So even if you were to be like aggressive on, let's say, eating vegetables, the way that we grow vegetables in the West, we basically destroy the soil. So everything can be tied back to the, like, fundamentally, like the soil, and the soil is a living organism. We destroy the soil by putting too much fertilizer into the ground, which we also use oil and petrol products to produce the fertilizer and then to farm the thing. So by producing big fields of corn or cabbage or broccoli or whatever, we're destroying the land and producing food that looks like food. It is big and green and lush, but because the soil is empty, the nutrients in that food is nowhere near the level of nutrients that we think is in that food. And you can look at that, right? You can look at the iron content of spinach over the last 10 years. It is dropping dramatically because all that we care about as humans is what it looks like as opposed to what's actually in it. Now, soil over a millennia in America and in England and other places that farm was built up basically by roaming ruminant animals, whether that's sheep or elk or cows or bison. In America, there were 60 million bison that wandered around the plains for thousands of years, and it's what has produced effectively like the breadbasket of the world. And America produces so much food in that farmland. It took thousands of years to produce the soil. We've destroyed it over the course of like 50 years with fertilizers effectively. And on any given day, I mean, this is the dark side, right? This is kind of more pressing than any of the climate stuff. On any given day, we could basically just not be able to produce any food. Like the soil health could be so degraded that we cannot actually produce any food from the land. It feels like it could happen at any given day. So you basically we need to completely redo our food system, where we are getting food locally. We are buying food, like crops are very hard to do in a regenerative way because of the way you have to pull them out of the ground. But you can restore the soil using ruminant animals, using cows, using bison, using sheep. And like people don't eat enough in general. People don't eat enough kind of red meat. So somewhere in there, I know this is a real rambling. Somewhere in there, like we need to restore the soil. Healthy soil also acts as like an air conditioner and can totally change the temperature of the climate. We need to completely restore our soil. We need to bring food local. But fundamentally in America, the thing I have found, the most important thing is like educating. People need to learn that like their food they eat is not food and is making them so unbelievably sick. And you think you can start with family. It's been very hard trying to educate my family on this, although my little brother suffers with ADHD, and I got him to a place where he basically cured his ADHD through food in a month. It was mind-blowing to hear the joy from this kid. So big space, lots of problems. Here's how I'm approaching it, I think, from a product standpoint. I'm I'm continuously looking for more and more problems to understand, solve. How can I use technology to do this? And I had friends with several ranchers who sell me food now, local ranchers, and it's definitely not a clear solution. The government being involved makes it very, very hard. So I fundamentally came to a point of being like, okay, I think in a long enough timeline, AI is going to replace all of our jobs. I am very passionate and knowledgeable about that space. The thing that is most important to me is that I probably need to own a farm and like be able to produce food and teach people as they sell them food. And where I got to was this idea that I would buy a remote farm in Colorado. It would be a working regenerative farm that produces food, probably not with animals. So it's technically really, really challenging. And also make it a like premium Airbnb destination, such that someone can come and stay. When they're there, we can feed them food that is like appropriately grown and healthy, and also educate them about the food. And I would say if you grow your own food at home, I mean, even plants, right? I grow lettuces and strawberries or whatever. When you grow your own food, you will find that the food tastes nothing like the food you buy in the supermarket. It is mind-blowingly better. The how it tastes is so good, either between nutrient density or that it's just appropriately like ripe. And so, yeah, that's kind of my vision. Like, there is a specific farm in Colorado I'm trying to buy. It's going to be like a 2-year journey. There's a lot of complications involved in kind of Colorado water law. I'm probably gonna put 15 to 20 fully 4-season like beautiful yurts on the land. Every yurt will have an acre of its own land. So you'll go, you have a very private experience. There will be a main kitchen. There's going to be a hot tub that's powered through like waste, which is like a crazy idea. Not burning a waste as well. But yeah, it is an endeavor that is like much larger than me. And basically, I think when you go down this rabbit hole, much like AI, you get to a point of like, okay, I am pretty anxious about the future here. So like I have 2 choices. I can like look into the light and try and be a part of a solution, or I can turn away and ignore that this ever existed and like just someone else can take control of this and I'm not going to live my own life. And that's just not really how I operate. So I went down very, very deep and then kind of turned into the light and was like, right, like I need to make a play here. And I've run through a number of different ideas, but I think the biggest thing I could do at scale is educate people about food, provide an experience that is high enough, like premium, such that the people that are staying there have the power to make big changes. So the farm we're looking at is right near Telluride, right? Like I would imagine we're going to be hosting, probably if we can get it to work, that we would only be hosting, multi-millionaire business decision makers. If we can have, once you have an effect on one of those people, that will have a downstream impact, right? I can totally see someone going back and be like, cool, vending machines full of shit. Like we're taking all of that chocolate out. We need to think about food. If I have healthy employees, there'll be better employees, yada, yada, yada. So long scrambly rant and how all these things come together. But yeah, just definitely trying to solve the understanding of food and the access of food. And I think in the US, if you extrapolate the cost of healthcare, chronic healthcare, the US will be bankrupt in 10 years. England probably 15 to 20, and the European nations not too far behind. Other European nations not too far behind. Like either we're doomed or we can solve this. And I just have to believe that like I can go make a play. And I think about it a lot, right? Like I'm talking about, there'll be a little bit of technology involved, but I'm fundamentally talking about completely changing my career again. Either living on a farm or traveling regularly, like 5 hours to a farm. But yeah, I think now that I have a kid, it's a bit like, it's just a no-brainer to me that I'd take a shot at something that's like extremely meaningful. Because whilst I run this consulting team and that's kind of fulfilling, like ultimately we're paid by extremely large, wealthy corporations, and like I'm helping them make a bit more money. That's so unfulfilling in like to your soul. So yeah, that was a big ramble, and hopefully that made some sense. And I'd say usually when I hear someone talk about this kind of stuff, it's nonsense to many people. So if anybody listening like has more questions, absolutely hit me up. I can send you a billion links and talk to you about this stuff until the cows come home. But yeah, it's fascinating to see there's so many forces moving against this. The all of the incentives are to keep us sick, get us sick, and eat crappy food. And I just can't sit by anymore. Like, we've got to make something happen here. So that's the kind of general thought.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. And I really agree that it's a huge problem that needs solving. And yeah, definitely will link your info, your website. You have a lot of articles there as well about food, clinical health, so on. So if anyone's like interested, they will be able to reach you. So just if we had more time, obviously we could talk about a few episodes probably about the concept, about different ideas around that. But I would just like to ask you if you're like capturing some of your learnings from previous ventures, from previous businesses. You said you sold one company for like 6 figures, and the other one like bankrupted you, right? So all the learnings from that, are you using anything effectively now that you're doing all that stuff?
Yeah, absolutely, 100%, absolutely. So my first one, like ultimately, so Source, I'll try to keep it short. Source we sold because we couldn't raise VC money. It wasn't going to be a venture-backed business. It was making 10 grand a month, and we were like young entrepreneurs that did not know what we were doing. And we like that whole journey as an entrepreneur, it was my first real venture. And there were things that needed to be communicated between me and my co-founder that were not communicated. And I think it would have just turned. I actually don't know if we would have sold it if we'd like been a bit more mature or been a bit more honest. So I came away from that being like, right, here's my like new rule for life is candor above all else. Which is going to be I'm going to be candid about everything. It's going to be abrasive. It's going to drive people mad. But like the unspoken things need to be said. And I took that into Flex, and it was a massively valuable a lot of the journey. Ultimately, like towards the end, it got so painful to have honest conversations, and I was so exhausted that I stopped having some honest conversations. And I think it didn't matter too much to me, but I did a disservice to my business partners to not call out certain bullshit. And actually, when the company ended, or when I left the company and it ended shortly after, I didn't talk to my co-founder for really 3 years. I was so angry at him, and I like had no way of communicating those things. But even after that experience, I was like, right, I do believe in this thing. I need to be candid with everybody, and I'm like radically that way. Even as a mentor and as a coach, that pisses off a lot of people. I will meet with, I'll be a textiles mentor, and I'll meet with 10 companies, and only one of them will ever want to meet with me again, because I said the unspoken thing, hey, you're focusing on the wrong thing. Your product is crap. You don't know what your users want. Like, these are the things you probably should be thinking about. And I say it in a lot nicer way, but fundamentally, like, I had always just wished someone had told me the radical truth about what was wrong. And so I do that. In a larger organization like the one I work in now, like that can be really abrasive to a lot of people. So I use that, and I use that lesson anyway. I do use that lesson everywhere. I really am a radically candid person. The other thing, one of the things I learned in Flex was then like once there were moments when I look back on it, and like there were symptoms or breadcrumbs of like, hey, this isn't working for these reasons. And it's like being confronted with a piece of evidence that doesn't sit right. And what I've learned is that people can turn into the light and be like, you know what, I'm just gonna learn and absorb this uncomfortable truth and make it move forwards. Or they turn away and they kind of ignore it and they ultimately fail. I guess it's kind of being on the receiving end to my candid advice or whatever. I've just learned, like, wherever there is that light, like I need to turn into that light. And it's been very interesting watching people, even when I talk about food, watching people like just not even question the things that to be false, to just go, no, like my life's a bit easier if I just believe eating these things is gonna be totally fine for me, when fundamentally it's cancer causing or whatever. And that to me has just been really valuable. Especially if you're working, say for Rebel as an example, I have these engineers that work in Pakistan, India. They will say things that are like 90% there, and there's like a 10% question mark. And there have been times where I've gone, I'm just going to assume I know what that 10% is, and we're totally fine. And then it always bites me in the ass. It's like, okay, that thing took 2 months because I just didn't question that 10%. And so it's uncomfortable, and you're like always, I'm always in flight or fight. But like if there's some inkling of something not being right, or some new piece of data that's uncomfortable, I have to lean into it. And you should always lean into it, because like the worst thing you can do is waste your time. And so if you could just get out of the way of like some uncomfortable situation right now, and just get out of the way, you can save so much time, even if it means your product is dead, your company is dead, this relationship isn't going to work. Like, just lean into the light and move forwards. Those are like my two big lessons I try and carry forwards.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, since we're like nearing the end of this episode, I was just like wondering if you would give, for example, a fellow entrepreneur. Most of our like listeners are entrepreneurs, indie hackers, other freelancers, trying to like also build products and stuff like that. So if there was a piece of advice you would give them on building their own companies, maybe you even like interested someone in buying small businesses, what would it be?
Yeah, I would say a couple of things, right? Like a couple of things. One, get used to failure. I mean, I have failed on so many things, and I think before it was fashionable, I was like embracing that failure, not necessarily glorifying it, but I'm just used to stuff failing. It really doesn't hurt my feelings too much. I'd say the only person I would worry about failing in front of is potentially my neighbors, which is a funny kind of point that leads into a second one, which is like I've gone on a path now, especially with my career, where it is actually very challenging in my mind to think about leaving and starting a new company, even though I desperately want to do that. Huge financial incentive not to, very big reputational risk. In my neighborhood, it would be a very uncouth thing to do, which is just so stupid that I care about those things. So like, it's a bit of like, be careful of the entanglements you might get that will like change your independence. When I think about it, even though being a product consultant is fun and extremely lucrative, like I probably would take back this job if I knew that it was going to have hamstrung my ability to start a new company, which is just is a little painful to admit. And then I think something else that's just been like really valuable for me. I mean, it's funny, you mentioned you like commented on my network. Like I don't think I have a great network, and I've never really understood networking, and I hate going to networking events. But if I meet somebody who like has a problem, and I think I can help them either personally or by introducing them to somebody, like I will do it. Like give away as much as you possibly can. That always comes back tenfold. Always comes back tenfold. Yeah, as an example, right? This farm I'm going to buy. If somebody who didn't know the farmer was going to buy it, it would be 4 times the price. But because I like helped this farmer on something really randomly, not even to do with farming, like 3 years ago, when the opportunity came up, it was just like, hey, by the way, I'm going to retire. If you want this farm, I'll give it to you for this price versus buying this on the market. It was like mind blowing. So yeah, definitely give away all that you can. If you're not making progress on your company or at work or with your product or with your users, like you can always create value by being like helpful to other people. And that might not come right now, but it will always like turn around its head and pay back dividends.
Wow, yeah, awesome advice. Thanks. And at this point, I would just like to thank you for coming to chat with me. I'm sorry that we don't have enough time to go over everything that's in your head, but I'm sure another opportunity will present itself. I wish you all the best with Rebel, and definitely looking forward to like reading more about the farming part. I'm really interested into that, so make sure to keep sharing that on your
Thank you
socials.
so much, Gal. Yeah, I really appreciate you having me.